Hello, good morning, dear students. So, today we are starting with the next chapter, chapter number 9, that is the bond of love. So, without wasting the time, let us just start with the chapter. I will begin with Bruno, my wife's pet sloth bear. I got him for her by an accident. So, the whole story is about a little pet bear that the writer has bought for her wife, and it was a pet bear for themselves. So, first of all, initially, the writer is giving the introduction to us that from where he has brought that bear. I will begin with Bruno, my wife's pet sloth bear. I got to him for her by an accident. 2 years ago, we were passing through the sugarcane fields near Mysore. People were driving away the wild pigs from their fields by shooting at them. Some were shot and some escaped. We thought that everything was over when suddenly a black sloth bear came out panting in the hot sun. So, 2 years ago, when they were passing through the sugarcane fields near the Mysore, number of people were driving the pigs out from their fields because the pigs will destroy their field, and they were shooting at that pigs so that they will just come out of the field and they won't destroy the crops. So when they thought that everything was over, means all the pigs had already run away, they started moving further. But when they were trying to move further, suddenly they found a black sloth bear that was panting when that was coming towards them in the hot sun. Now I will not shoot a sloth bear wantonly, but unfortunately for the poor beast, one of my companions did not feel that way about it and promptly shoot the bear on the spot. So they were thinking that they would not shoot on that sloth bear, but suddenly that unfortunately the poor person who was trying to shoot, he also thought that might be possible that this bear may destroy the field, so he just shoot on the bear on the spot. As we watched the fallen animal, we were surprised to see that the black fur on its back moved and left a prostrate body. Then we saw it was a baby bear that had been riding on its mother's back when the sudden shot had killed her. So that person who was there along with the writer, he had just shooted on that sloth bear. But what had happened when that person has shooted on that sloth bear? The bear he just died, but suddenly another black fur was has came out from the body of the bear, and they observed that it was a baby bear that was riding. Means the mother was carrying that baby bear in her stomach, and she was going over there, but suddenly that person had shooted on that bear. But whenever the person shoot on that bear, the baby bear just came out from the body. The little creature ran around its prostrate parent, making a pitiful noise. So the little bear, baby bear, was moving around his mother's body, and he was just, I should say, he was just able to cry, or he was not able to express what he was feeling. I ran up to it to attempt to capture. It scooted into the sugarcane field, but when the writer just tried to take that baby bear on his hand, that baby bear just scooted away, means ran away in the sugarcane field. Following it with my companions, I was at last able to grab it by the scruff of its neck while it snapped and tried to scratch me with its long hooked claws. So finally, at last, the writer tried to grab the opportunity and he just took that bear on his hand. But whenever he tried to take that bear on his hand, the bear just, I should say, he was having long nails, so he just bited it with his hooked claws. We put it in one gunny bags we had brought, and when I got back to Bangalore, I duly presented it to my wife. So they just gunny bags means पुराने ज़माने में जिसमें गेहूँ आता था ना, I should say sack bags. So in that type of sack, they just kept that sloth bear, and reached the Bangalore, when they reached Bangalore, he just gave a gift. He presented it to his wife. She was delighted. She at once put a colored ribbon on its neck, and after discovering a cub was a boy, she christened it Bruno. So she already When the writer presented it to his wife, she was highly excited, and when she just tied a ribbon around its neck, and after discovering that the baby was a boy, she gave her a name, Bruno. Bruno soon took to drinking milk from the bottle. It was but a step further, and within very few days he started eating and drinking everything else. So as they had already patted that Bruno, so they started giving milk to that Bruno, and suddenly the Bruno had learned how to drink the milk from the bottle. It was a step further, and within a very few days, he also started eating everything else. And everything is the right word, for he ate porridge made from any ingredients, vegetables, fruits, nuts, meat, especially pork, curry, rice, regardless of condiments and chilies, breads, eggs, chocolates, sweets, pudding, ice cream, etc., etc., etc. So he started eating everything. As for buttermilk, bear, alcoholic liquor, and in fact anything in liquid, it went all down with relish. So everything he used to consume. The bear became very attached to the two Austrian dogs and to all the children of the tenants living in a bungalow. So the Bruno was very much attached with the two Austrian dogs that were there in their bungalow and with all the children that were living over there. He was felt left quite free in his younger days and spent his time in playing, running into the kitchen, and going to sleep in our beds. So, in the initial days, he was left very free, and he used to spend his time by playing, running in the kitchen, and also going to sleep on their beds. One day, an accident befell him. So, accidentally, something had happened. I put down a poison to kill the rats and mice that had gone into my library. So, what did the writer do? He just put down the poison to kill the rats into his room, because as the rats had already entered his room, Bruno entered the library, and he often did, and as he often did, he ate some of the poison. So as whatever the food Bruno used to see, he used to consume that food. So this time also, what Bruno has done, when he entered into the library, he saw that something was lying over there, and he did not know that it was a poison, so he just consumed some of it. Paralysis set it to the extent that he could not stand on his feet, but he dragged himself on his stumps to my wife. So he was paralyzed, and it was up to such extent that he could not even stand on his feet. But rolling over, he just moved towards the wife of writer, who called me. I guessed what had happened. So the writer guessed that what has already happened. Off I rushed to the car to the wife's residence. So the writer went to the residence of a veterinary doctor. As a case of poisoning, tame beer, barium carbonate, what to do? So the writer is saying that a case of poisoning, and it is a tame beer, barium carbonate. Barium carbonate is a name of a poison that we used to give to the rats. Out came his medical books, and the feverish reference of index began. What poison? Sir, barium carbonate. Oh, yes, barium salts. Barium carbonate symptoms, paralysis treatment, injections of. Just a minute, sir. I will bring my syringe and the medicine. So they just went to the hospital, and the doctor is bringing his syringe and the medicine. Attached back to the car, Bruno still floundering about in his stumps, but clearly waking rapidly. Some vomiting and heavy breathing, with having flanks and gaping mouth. So the condition of the Bruno was very critical. Hold him, everybody. In goes of hypodermic Bruno squeals 10 cc, and the antidote enters into his system without a drop being wasted. So the injection was given to him. 10 minutes later, the condition changed. Another 10 cc injected. 10 minutes later, breathing less stertorous. Stertorous means noisy breathing. Bruno can move his arms and legs and little, although he cannot stand yet. But after this treatment of 20 cc, he was able to move his legs and arms, but he could not even stand yet. 30 minutes later, Bruno gets up and has a great feed. After the 30 minutes, he was all right, and he had consumed a great food. He looks at us disdainfully, as much as to say, "What's barium carbonate to a big black bear like me?" Bruno is still eating. So he was just seeing and glancing at the writer and his wife that what is barium carbonate for him. He was still eating. Another time he found nearly 1 gallon of old engine oil which I had drained from the sump of the stored breaker and was keeping as a weapon against the inroads of termites. He promptly drank a lot, but he had no ill effects whatever. So a Stuntbreaker is the name of an American car, and the oil which we used to put in the car, that car was kept by the writer, and second time he just consumed that oil. But it was the God's grace that there was no side effect of that oil. The months rolled and on, and Bruno had grown many times the size he was when he came. So the size of the Bruno was increased. He had equal the Australians in height and had outgrown them. But he was just as sweet, just as mischievous, just as playful. And he was very fond of all of us. Above all, he loved my wife, and she loved him too. She had changed his name from Bruno to Baba, a Hindustani word saying a small boy. So, as he grew up, the writer's wife changed the name of Bruno to Baba, and he could do a few tricks too. At the command Baba Wrestle or Baba Box, he vigorously tackled anyone who come forward for a rough and tumble. So anyone who used to come, he used to respond to everyone. Give him a stick and say Baba hold gun, and he pointed a stick at you. Ask him Baba where's the baby, and he immediately produced and cradled affectionately a stump of wood which he had carefully concealed on his rose straw bed. But because of the tenant's children, poor Bruno or Baba had to kept chained most of the time. So there was a full freedom in the house of writer, but because of the small children who used to play over there and the tenant in the bungalow, because of them they used to keep the Bruno tied all the time. They and my son had advised then my son had advised and I advised my wife and friends advised her too to give Baba to the zoo at Mysore. So as he was growing up, so they advised the wife to give him to send that bear in the zoo of Mysore. He was getting too big and to keep at home. After some weeks of such advice, she lastly consented hastily, and before she could change her mind, a letter was written to the curator of the zoo. Did you want to tame bear for his collection? He replied yes. So before the mind of the writer's wife changes, when she concealed that no, she is ready to send the Bruno to the zoo, sorry, Baba to the zoo. Immediately, they wrote a letter to the curator of zoo that are they interested in collecting a tame bear, and he replied, yes. The zoo sent cage from Mysore in a lorry, a distance of 87 miles, and Baba was packed off. We all missed him greatly, but in a sense we were relieved. My wife was inconsolable. She wept and fretted. For the first few days she could not eat a thing. So the wife of the writer was highly affected by Bruno. Then she wrote a number of letters to the curator. How was Baba back? Came the replies, well, but fretting he refuses food too. So he wrote number of letters to the curator of the zoo that how was Baba. They said that he is fine, but the same condition was of Baba that he could not consume the food. Friends had conjectured that the bear could not recognize her. So, and I thought so too. But while she was yet some yards from us, his Baba saw her and recognized her. So, friends and number of people went to the zoo, but they said that the Baba could not recognize them as they were a part of the family members, a part of the bungalows. Then also the Baba could not recognize them. But when the writer's wife went over there, he immediately recognized her. He howled with happiness. She ran up to him, patted him through the bars, and stood on his head in the light. So, the wife of the writer was standing in front of the cage and patted him. For the next 3 hours, she would not leave the cage. She gave him tea, lemonade, cakes, ice creams, and number of things. Then closing time came and we had to leave. So when the writer took his wife to the zoo to meet Baba, he recognized him. For 3 hours, they stood over there, and at the time of the closing of the zoo, they departed. My wife cried bitterly, Baba cried bitterly. Even the hired curator and the keepers were self depressed. As for me, I had reconciled myself to what I knew was going to happen next. Oh, please, sir, she asked the curator, may I take my Baba back? Hesitantly, he answered, Madam, he belongs to the zoo and it is a government property now. I cannot give away the government property. But if my boss, the superintendent of Bangalore, agrees, certainly you may take him back. So the writer's wife is informed, asking to the curator that can I take him back. So the curator is replying her that it is the property of the zoo, and now as being it is a government property, she cannot take the back. But if the superintendent of the zoo, superintendent officer of Bangalore, agrees, then she can surely take it back. That followed my return journey to Bangalore, and I visited the superintendent's bungalow. A tearful pleading, Baba and I are both voting for each other. Will you please give him back to me? He was a kind hearted man and consented. Not only that, but he wrote to the curator telling him to land a cage for transporting the bear to Bangalore. So the superintendent also agreed, and he said that you can take the Baba back. Not only the Baba, but he also gave the facility of transporting the Baba into the cage to his house. Beck went to Mysore again, armed with the superintendent's letter. Baba was driven into a small cage and hoisted on the top of the car. The cage was tied securely, and the slow and careful return journey to Bangalore was accomplished. Once home, a squad of coolies were engaged for special work for compound. An island was made for Baba. It was 20 feet long and 15 feet wide and was surrounded by a dry pit. So, a position means a high position, I should say, a stage like was created for Baba. It was 20 feet long and 15 feet wide and 7 feet deep. A wooden box that once housed fowls were brought and put on the island for Baba to sleep at night. Straws were placed inside to keep him warm and his baby, and a gun stump, along with the gun, a piece of bamboo, both which had been sentimentally preserved since he had been sent away to the zoo, were put back to him to play with. So, number of things that were there with Baba for playing, all the things were given to him back. In a few days, the coolies hoisted the cage on the island of Baba, and the island of Baba was released. He was delighted, standing on his handles. He pointed his gun and called his baby. My wife spent hours sitting on the chair while we sat on her lap. So, the Baba also gave birth to a small baby bear, and the writer's wife used to take care of both of them. The way my wife reaches the island and leaves it interesting. I have tied a rope of overhanging branch, a mango tree with a loop at its end. Putting one foot at the loop, she kicks off to other. The surrounding pit. The return journey is made same way. Who you can say that now it's a sloth bear and has no sense of affection, no memory and individual characteristics. Thank you.